Hey, what's up guys? So I'm back and I may have some explaining to do. For you newcomers, I used to do these short videos on games I thought were underrated or undeserving of their negative reputations, and their appeal was that I could talk about a game in a pretty shorthand format so I could introduce you guys to some stuff you may not have otherwise gotten into, but the short and sweet nature of the videos meant I didn't have to put my typical 40 to 70 hours worth of work into them. These Trash Classics episodes were fun as hell to make because they would almost always start a few interesting conversations. But sadly, I got so caught up in making full series retrospectives that these videos kinda fell by the wayside. Well, it's time to get back to work, and that means diving headfirst back into the world of games that deserve way more love. Today we're going to be checking out Shining Force EXA on the PS2, and you may be asking yourself two very important questions right now. First off, why is Jared so damn nasally? And second, why the hell would he choose a PS2 action RPG spin-off from a long-dead strategy RPG franchise? Well, to answer those in no particular order, my allergies have been going haywire lately, and I guess we'll find out. What's up guys, I'm Jared from Avalanche Reviews, and this is Trash Classics. So here's a nice little fact about me. The SNES was and always has been my favorite 16-bit game console. That being said, my parents made the decision that I was going to be a Sega kid in the 90s, and thanks to my, let's call it not quite affluent upbringing, the first Super Nintendo I ever owned was given to me by a friend long after the launch of the PS1. So why is that important? Well, I'm a huge fan of JRPGs, and as a Genesis owner, there were really only a few names in town that scratched that particular itch on the platform, and Shining Force was definitely one of the best. The first 4 SF games are legendary among classic game fans and collectors, and for good reason. At the time, strategy RPGs hadn't exactly taken off here in the West, but I'm absolutely sure more than a few of you guys watching owe your initial experience with the genre to this series. Yeah, sure, they were simple to a degree, and yes, very linear, but they were also charming as hell with their Tolkien-esque artwork, and actually offered very satisfying strategy RPG gameplay. It was easy to turn the game on, play a few battles, then go on with your day, but at the same time, it was also an easy game to binge for hours on end. Trust me, I know. Well, like most things that existed in the 90s, Shining Force found it kind of hard to transition into the 2000s. The Shining games, which, to be fair, always covered a wide gamut of genres, seemed no longer to be interested in stepping back into the SRPG territory. So if you cut your teeth on those early Genesis, Saturn, or Sega CD games, it's easy to understand feeling a little disillusioned with the franchise at this point.
Dinner? Here I come!
And Sega didn't do themselves any favors by releasing another game in the SF series but having it be an action RPG. Fans at this point were kind of done with all the nonsense, so unsurprisingly the game didn't get the best reception over here. And personally, I kind of just let it slip out of my mind after a while. That is, until I came across a copy for a mere 300 yen in a secondhand shop in Tokyo. I don't know, something about the cover art or the cheap price tag really convinced me to grab it, so I took it home, understood none of the text and maybe 20% of the spoken dialogue, but something about the bright, colorful graphics and fun gameplay piqued my interest enough to track down a copy of the English release, and, well, here we are. Shining Force EXA, or EXA, or honestly, I'm really not sure how to pronounce it. We're going to say EXA for the rest of the video. Anyways, it's the story of Toma, Cyril, Gadford, Maybell, and these two things. A group of the most wholesome anime character stereotypes you've ever seen before, searching for the Shining Force, a mythical sword that's supposed to give the wielder immense power. And this is where I kind of drew a blank. If memory serves me, the Shining Force in the title of the earlier games always described the army that followed the main character into battle against whatever evil was threatening the world, but I'm not exactly a Shining Force expert, so I could be wrong about that. Well, anyways, the group has pooled their resources with the agreement that they will help each other find the legendary sword, and whoever ends up getting it will help the others with whatever goals they have. From the very start, the game makes it clear as crystal that Cyril actually joined the team to sabotage their progress. She doesn't want anyone finding the Shining Force, and I hope she's good at handling failure because not even an hour into the game, our crew finds it. Which seems odd that no one else has before because it's within walking distance of the town they're all staying at. So our main character Toma pulls the sword from its resting place in the most anime way possible, and I gotta admit, I actually laughed at this part.
Shining Force!
And I think that's what I like about the story. Not so much that it's funny, but the fact that it's lighthearted. Sure, there's going to be a few jokes here and there, but even in the face of a story concerning warring factions and a kind of implied genocide, no one seems to be taking themselves too seriously. For example, when stopped from slaughtering a whole town full of innocent people, an enemy commander literally runs away crying. I think that's a pretty smart move. This was clearly a one-off tale, and the devs treated it as such. It kind of feels like they were really having fun with the ideas here, and that comes across as a kind of authenticity. The voice acting can be relatively serviceable, and even the poorly delivered lines have an endearing quality that only early 2000s English dubs can offer. As far as gameplay is concerned, there's a lot to bite into here. The main portion of the game is spent exploring the world map and its dungeons while engaging in real-time action RPG combat, but there's a lot of customization to be found as well. There's a certain type of currency that can be found that allows you to tweak your stats, and more of these options are unlocked by exploring off the beaten path and finding these monolith-looking things. You can also upgrade the castle you get after absorbing the Shining Force, and while you're out with your current party, whoever's left at the castle may have to defend it from attack by monsters. Then there's a blacksmith that can be recruited to your castle who's going to upgrade your gear for a price, and skills that can be slotted into that gear. All in all, I was really surprised with the depth of things to do in this game. It's deceptively shallow feeling at first, but does this amazing job of continuing to open up even after the initial hours. And while a bunch of content is really nice, you gotta be asking yourself how the combat fares, since you're gonna be engaging in it a majority of the time, and I gotta say, it's pretty damn satisfying. Toma is your typical melee-driven type of experience, while Cyril takes care of long-distance stuff with crossbows and magic spells. The two can be swapped between anytime you return to your robotic castle, and both offer a pretty equally fun time. Having two main characters may have given me the urge to grind more than I would have otherwise, since I didn't want one to be massively underleveled, but to be honest, I've always been a fan of grinding in an RPG as long as it's done right, and in my opinion, Shining Force EXA most definitely does it right. At the start of the game, enemies are relatively sparsely placed on the map, but eventually that veil lifts and you'll be taking on what seems like 50 bad guys at once. And just like in real life, running into a crowd and swinging a giant spiked club is satisfying as all hell. Each weapon you equipped will have 3, 4, 5, or even more hits worth of a combo, and the attack button can be held down for a special attack, but if your timing is good, you can execute a charge right after the last hit of your regular combo is landed and pull off an instant charge. Then if you charge the attack button once again right after that initial charge, you get this really cool massive damage dealing assault that changes depending on the weapon you have equipped. Special skills and magic can be used with triangle, and you can take a few friends with you into these fights, which is always awesome. One thing that really stood out to me though was just how closely this game resembled E7 on the PSP. Now, I know the action RPG design docs aren't exactly complicated, and it might be easy to accidentally stumble on a style that's already been done before, but everything from the combat to the fact that you can continue to hit and juggle dead enemies just screams Nihon Falcom to me. And let's face it, a higher tier YouTuber than I would probably look into this and find some kind of connection between the two dev houses, but you guys aren't coming here for quality content, right? You coming for this voice. God, I gotta stop doing that. That's, cringy. Anyways, if I did have one complaint, it would be the fact the amount of enemies on screen can really do some damage to the otherwise perfectly smooth frame rate the game operates at. When the mobs get big, expect to see the game speed get cut in a third, and while normally this would annoy the hell out of me, it only happens with huge groups of enemies, and you don't see this too often while just running around in the environment. I will say though, this really messes with your input timing when trying to pull off the old combo to charge to more powerful charge thing, but to be honest, when you get in a huge crowd and everything slows down, it kind of feels like a bullet hell shooter, and every hit that connects feels massive and powerful. I don't know why, I actually kind of like it. And now that I sit down to really consolidate my thoughts on the matter, the gameplay here is actually pretty simple. Outside of the staggering level of stat customization and optional playstyles, you're always going to be doing one of two things, either exploring a new area or engaging in combat, and that's kind of a rewarding simplicity. Honestly, I went into this game expecting to agree with all the reviewers in the early 2000s, but it charmed the hell out of me with how much polish it put on such a simple idea. Lately, I've been re-falling in love with the PS2's library of forgotten hits, and going strictly off the gameplay, I think this game belongs on that list for sure.
Nobody tells me what to do!
At the time of Shining Force EXA's release, we really expected more out of our middle market video games, graphically speaking, and if there was one game that demonstrated my perfect expectations out of the console, it's this. I know most companies were going for a more realistic take at the time, but I always thought the PS2 was just powerful enough to make highly stylized, less lifelike graphics pop really well. And as you can see, that is exactly what Shining Force is pulling off here. All of the character models are just one step above your typical 32-bit super deformed RPG character design. That means proportions, while not super accurate to real life, are at least a little more real looking than this. Everything seems to be sort of cel shaded, but lacking that dark black outline that cel shaded games had at the time, which, if you ask me, is a good thing. The environments you adventure through are beautiful at times, and the emphasis on color and brightness really adds to the lighthearted nature of the game. While in combat, it can be easy to lose track of your character in an ocean of enemies, but that's only an issue as long as you're not mashing the X button, which you'll never be doing. Little impact effects and the full screen blur that accompanies hits and specials all look really nice, even though I'm fairly sure they're adding to the slowdown problem. Being a 90s kid through and through, I really like the opening anime FMV, but it seems like most other cutscenes in the game are handled with these pre-rendered 3D affairs, and they don't look bad by any means. It's just the intro got me hyped for a little more, I don't know, weebiness, I guess? Most conversations take place in these visual novel style screens, and the artwork here is kind of odd looking to me. I mean, it's drawn well, like really well, but for some reason it shares the in-game graphics lack of strong outlines, which isn't really a problem, but on top of that, it seems to be kind of blurry or maybe low res. Now, I tried booting the game into progressive scan using the homebrew utility GSM, and while it did help add a little bit of lost detail back into the game, it's still very blurry looking, especially on the edges of the art where a few black outlines might have really helped. Who knows, honestly, maybe they just scanned low-res images into the game, but that doesn't seem to make sense if you paid an anime house to do this animated intro and someone in-house to do your character art. That just seems like an odd step to take, and on the PS2, we've seen much better artwork. I'm not really sure why this interests me so much, but if you have any ideas to why this would happen, let me know down in the comments. And you know, now that I think about it, I really wish I would have captured the rest of this game in 480p. In fact, if you have the ability to run homebrew on your PS2, I'd say definitely use GSM for this title. This is one of the few games that it works perfectly on, and while the difference is slight, it's a noticeable improvement as far as sharpness and clarity goes. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'll have a link in the description or here on screen to a video where I explain GSM a little more in depth. Aside from progressive scan nonsense, I noticed some cool things going on in the background, like a very shallow LOD distance where characters would pop in and out, which seemed a little too close for me, but I'm more than sure this was to avoid more slowdown, which it does accomplish, so no harm no foul, I guess. Shining Force EXA is a very striking package. The bright, colorful look is exactly what the gameplay calls for, and the anime aesthetic is very well done in my opinion. You guys know I'm a big fan of well-designed interfaces, and menus here do a great job at copying the original, icon-driven look that the early games had. Environments feel equal parts wide open and confined, so you're always sure where you're going and where you've been. And even though it's a little blurry, I really like the style of the hand-drawn art on display. For sure, this is no Silent Hill 3 as far as graphics are concerned, but it looks perfect for the type of game that it is, and that's really an accomplishment. It's pretty easy to have visual elements in a game clash with other elements, but EXA is damn near perfect in all of its middle market glory. Man, don't you miss relatively low-budget Japanese console games? It's enough to make you curse the advent of mobile titles with microtransactions, since that's pretty much all we're getting out of that island nowadays. So yeah, if you ask me, Shining Force EXA is a very fun little action RPG. One that may surprise you with how much it offers. Right from the start, it doesn't seem like much of anything, but not even a full hour in, everything opens up and you're given a lot of stuff to do. And yeah, maybe some of that stuff is grinding, but in a game where the combat is so fun, grinding's never a chore. Those of you who, like myself, really enjoy cheesy voice acting will absolutely love the performances on display here, and the graphics are absolutely perfect for this kind of game. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, Shining Force EXA is most certainly a trashed classic. Hey guys, thank you for hanging out with me yet again. I haven't done an episode of Trash Classics in a long while, and I kind of forgot how fun this is. If you want more of this series, I'll have a playlist linked here on screen, and if you like independent reviews / analysis, maybe consider checking out my Patreon. And with all that out of the way, I very much hope you had an awesome day today, and I will see you guys next time.